The 10th episode of Frieren Beyond Journey's End Season 2 is kind of an unassuming one to be a season finale, but it brings a fitting conclusion to a low-key season of episodic road trip adventures. By keeping the scope of the season so limited, Studio Madhouse has been able to maintain the consistent quality that's central to the show's identity, and continues to expand massively on the manga chapters it's adapting. So let's finish off this little Frieren video trilogy with a good old-fashioned breakdown of the animation and storytelling choices, and find out what's so great about this episode, which was directed by Kentaro Hori with storyboards by Tomoya Kitagawa, and it adapts chapters 79 and 80 of the manga. We open on the Great Tor Canyon and Jawn the Dwarf's 200-year bridge project. This show is constantly expanding on the source material and using filmic techniques to bring its world to life, even in the subtlest places like here, when Jawn warns them about the giant birds that have been terrorizing the bridge. In the manga, they're all standing together at the edge of the canyon when the bird shows up, but in the anime, Frieren walks out onto the bridge first. When Jawn says there's a problem, she looks back towards him, and the simulated camera racks focus to the background, following her gaze. It's a very small detail, but it puts you into her perspective rather than the perspective of an omniscient observer, and makes it a little more surprising when the birds do appear. But if you do enjoy the perspective of an omniscient observer, then you should check out this video's sponsor, Pop Epoch. Pop Epoch is a civilization builder, but not the kind that expects you to read a manual first. It's an idle management sim where you start in the Ice Age, just a tribe trying to survive, and you work your way forward through history toward modern time. By gathering and managing your resources, constructing new buildings and monuments, and discovering new technologies, you can watch your civilization evolve visually as you advance into new eras. It's the kind of game that's easy to pick up and just run with. Along the way, you can recruit real historical figures and mythical characters like Prometheus, Joan of Arc, Socrates, and each one brings something different to how your civilization develops. There's no complex micromanagement, no war strategy, no deep historical knowledge required, just a casual sim where the whole point is that progression feels good and moves at a pace that actually respects your time. If that sounds like your thing, use my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to download Pop Epoch and use the code POPLAUNCH for some free resource boxes when you start. Now back to it. These few cuts by Ryota Yamawaki are all about speed ramping. The bird's wings snap open in 3 quick frames, and then everything slows down and hangs in the air for a couple seconds. And I guess this beast has been slacking on its preening, because that's a lot of feathers that come off and fill the air. The reverse shot of Frieren stays in slow motion and animated on 3s before snapping back into real time and switching to 2s, with her hair flapping into drastically different positions with each frame, which gives it this chaotic feeling. And finally, when Fern blasts the fool, 2 brief impact frames transition back to slow motion and the bird hangs in the air, half eviscerated for 7 frames on 3s, then quickly turns to ash on 2s again and scatters, slowing down one more time to close out the little burst of action. Jawn offers them a spell to perfectly flip pancakes in exchange for wiping out the nest, which Frieren of course agrees to immediately, and this flashback is where the anime really expands on the source material. First of all, the animators have taken the opportunity of a lifetime offered to them by an area that's specified to be extremely windy and a character with such a luxurious curtain of mustache. Normally, a mustache like this would be an excuse to do less animation for mouth movements when he's talking, but where would the fun be in that? Then, when the manga just goes straight to the nest, the anime does what it does best: a big ol' montage. Jawn's little side story honestly feels a little flat to me in the manga, but this montage makes him the main character for a minute, and I'm way more invested in this bridge after seeing the years of struggle that went into building it. This shot gives us a sense of the work that needs to be done to prepare each individual log, and the repetition of this one is a classic technique to show the repetitiveness of a routine. He gets to learn the power of friendship like a real anime protagonist, and the perfect pancakes even make an appearance. I guess in fantasy Germany they still make pancakes in the tall, fluffy Japanese style? Interesting. And once we find out that the village has been rebuilt, it has a lot more impact to it now that we've seen Jawn's isolation in the early days of building the bridge. It's a small and simple story, but the anime takes this random little side quest and gives it real emotional weight by using film techniques to put us into the perspective of the characters and taking its time to let us get invested. The gang come to an ice crystal mining camp, and Frieren decides to take advantage of good ol' inflation to replenish their funds. I really like this frame. It's almost better as a simple still image than it is in motion in the show. Anyway, they arrive at a majestic doggy, and are we sure these are beasts that really need to be killed? Because it kinda seems like this is just their natural habitat? Ah, okay, fine. I guess it is vital that Frieren gets the money to impulse buy an ugly little overpriced urn later. Here's a weird little detail, and technically a rare, tiny error in the animation or compositing. It looks like in this frame, the wolf's mustache from the previous frame appears to have been separated into two different layers and sticks around one frame longer than it should. You can see the overlap where it sits on top of the current frame in the foreground and behind it in the background. I have no clue why this would have happened, or why those layers would have been separated in the first place, a real mystery. This whole next 4 minutes is completely anime original. The entire fight is a single panel in the manga, and it's a good thing I didn't do a whole series on every episode of this show, because I think you would have gotten very tired of hearing me say that exact sentence over and over again. I love this cut. The wolf is animated on 2s, except for the right side of the face, which has a second, more scrunched version of each of the base frames, to show the vibration from the snarl. It makes it feel really creepy to have one piece on a different frame rate than the rest of the wolf. The low detail, snowy environment makes it especially easy to animate the ground without it looking too separate from the background art, and so they do that a lot. I especially like this bit where the camera glides along just above the ground, and instead of just blurred out speed lines and such, you can see the texture of the surface of the snow whizzing by. Combined with the background art, the way the snowdrifts move left to right, then move directly away from us, and then left to right again as the wolf dodges, even helps sell the illusion of the camera panning back and forth as it moves to follow the action. A very subtle but impressive detail. Here's another use of that rack focus to follow a character's gaze, and in this close-up, the wolf's paw swings towards Stark, and the animator shows the intensity of that swing in kind of a similar way to that snarl earlier. The actual primary position of the paw only changes every 2 frames, but each frame has a variant with more smears, which put the cut as a whole on 1s, and when played at full speed gives the impression of not just velocity, but intense wind resistance because of that velocity. Here, Stark is animated on 2s, but the wolf has twice as many frames, which subliminally sells the feeling of it overtaking him. And here they used those smeary duplicate frames once again, but this time to show the wolf getting zapped by Fern's shield. This is a very common shot in this show, but it's just always so cool how they show Fern's magic charging up with a close-up of her fingers tightening around her staff, and extra layers of light and shadow growing around the wood texture. I love how this effects cut makes it look like she's pulling all the energy out of the surrounding air and concentrating it in one spot before these 2 impact frames that look like someone dropped a bottle of ink on the animation cells. And this line makes a lot more sense after that fight sequence than it did after that single panel. In the manga, this is where it ends. They go back to the camp and Frieren wastes all their money again. But the anime takes the opportunity to take this episodic adventure and tie it in with the events of the rest of the season by bringing back the Norm Company. Because of the character's good deeds earlier, the Northern Plateau is gradually becoming more habitable again. It's a pretty low-key season, without any big overarching plot stuff, just a series of stops along a road trip through the Northern Plateau, and the season finale, aside from some changes they've made to make it feel a little more like a conclusion, is no different. But I think it makes sense to do the season this way, taking the 20 chapters in between the mage exam and the Golden Land that was teased at the end of the episode, the road to El Dorado, if you will.
The City of Gold.
No.
And making it its own mini-season instead of tacking it on to the start of the next one, it avoids the possibility of catching up too quickly on the manga, which is still on hiatus, and also avoids the risk of overloading the crew and deteriorating the quality of the series. Studio Madhouse, more like Studio Sensible House. And it's crucial that they maintain that attention to the little details like they did in this episode or throughout the season, because as I've said in my last video, the small, quiet moments are the real treasure of this story. Hey, come to think of it, if you liked this video, you'll definitely like that one. Maybe go watch it, I don't know, I'm just trying to look out for what's best for you. Or if you already watched it but haven't subscribed yet, consider doing that so you don't miss whatever I post next. Either way, thanks for watching, and thank you so much to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon, and who I'm gradually sculpting a garden of statues to honor. Smackintosh, Scorpiante, Dodo and Gogo, KDL, Serial Iolea, Pico, Newtaf, Patrick Davison, Arborix, Ginger June, Dr. Yola McSwag, Grab G, Joe, Fogun Nugget, Annie, Sammy Z, Nozumi Corgi, Machu Stepek, Juicebox, Bloodsbane, Orwing, Chris Ushi, and Triac, as well as all the other names you're seeing on the screen right now.